Welcome to Hood Politics. In this episode, I will be discussing the story of Dannie Farber. The facts of the case are as follows. Narbonne is a high school located in Harbor City, which is a neighborhood in the South Bay area of Los Angeles. In 2008, Narbonne was a football powerhouse. The team was coached by Manuel Douglas, and according to some, it was just something in the air that season. The team destroyed Carson High 26-0, as well as Hamilton High 33-0, and they dominated Gardena High 55-0. The Narbonne Gauchos made it to the 2008 Los Angeles City Football Championship, where they faced off with the San Pedro High Pirates at the LA Coliseum. After a hard-fought battle, the game ended in a 21-21 tie. The rules didn't allow for overtime, so the teams were forced to share the title. Both teams ended their seasons with 12 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. Although disappointed in not being able to play until there was a winner, the Gauchos were happy to have made it so far, and the community was proud. Among the roster of the Gauchos was a young man named Dannie Farber. Danny was in his senior year during that historic season and played the positions of running back and defensive back. He previously attended Silverado High in Victorville, California, and transferred to Narbonne in 2008. He immediately sought out Coach Douglas, flashed a smile, and said, "I'm your guy, Coach. I'm going to make plays for you." Coach Douglas said he heard that line a million times before, but Danny actually lived up to it. During the semifinals that year, the Gauchos were playing the Crenshaw High Cougars. Late in the fourth quarter, Danny caught a touchdown pass, helping the Gauchos beat the Cougars 25-24 and putting them on track for the championship game. Danny was the heart of the team. After the Gauchos found an old flag on campus, Danny asked Coach Douglas if he could carry it onto the field during games. Coach Douglas thought it was a great idea, and from that moment on, Danny could be seen carrying the flag in his number 4 jersey, rallying the Gauchos into battle. Narbonne wasn't the first time Danny was able to showcase his talent. He had been playing football since 5 years old, and he always had the same attitude, to dominate the competition.
Dannie Farber.
And you are what?
Running back.
Running back for who?
Sometimes Clinton White.
I heard you pretty good, dude. You be running touchdowns, huh?
Yeah.
You like running?
Yep.
You like getting hit?
No.
Oh, you don't get hit that much, though, huh?
No.
Not that much? Yeah, I got the chance to check you out last week. How long you been playing?
3 years.
3 years? You played, so you've been with Coach Field for 3 years?
Yep.
You had 3 good years at running back? So what is your goal? To go to the Super Bowl or do what? And win it?
Yep.
You got the Clinic Blue this week. What you gonna do this week?
Do what I've been doing the whole season.
And what's that?
Nominate.
Dominate?
Yep.
All right, that's what I want to hear, homie.
Danny was also gifted at track and basketball, but he loved football. Multiple universities, such as UCLA and San Diego State, expressed interest in offering him a scholarship, and although he was open to all offers, his heart was set on USC. In early 2009, he started working out with the football team at Los Angeles Harbor City College. Danny's mother, Danielle Lewis, and his stepfather, Kenneth McGee, supported Danny every step of the way, but they always told him to have a plan B. So if football didn't pan out, he planned to earn a degree and become a firefighter. Danny was ready to take on the world. He knew that he could accomplish whatever he put his mind to, and he had a great support system of family and friends. Everyone knew that he would be successful in whatever he did, but unfortunately, he would never get to reach his full potential. On Sunday, May 24th, 2009, at around 9:30 p.m., Danny was at a Louisiana fried chicken restaurant having dinner with his girlfriend, Araceli. The restaurant was located on the corner of Rosecrans and Central Avenue in the city of Compton. As the couple talked and ate, a hooded man entered the restaurant and approached their table. The man looked at Danny and asked, "Where you from, cuz?" Danny stood up and replied, "What?" Moments later, the man pulled a gun and opened fire multiple times, hitting Danny in his left thumb, shoulder, and chest. The shooter then fled the restaurant and ran to a waiting car. Danny attempted to crawl towards the exit, but collapsed near the counter. Araceli ran to his aid and lifted his shirt. She saw a bullet wound in the middle of his chest. Witnesses called 911, and Danny was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 18 years old and just 3 weeks shy of graduating. Detectives arrived at the scene and began their investigation. Although there was surveillance video, it didn't show the killer's face or give them any clues to his identity. But after hearing that the killer asked Danny about his gang affiliation, they knew that the shooting was gang related. Police spoke to Araceli. She said she didn't recognize the shooter, but described him as an 18 or 19-year-old black man, around 5'8" and about 160 pounds. Police also spoke to a man named Randy Wells and a woman named Anita Cooks. The two were in a drive-thru at the time of the shooting, but told officers that they didn't see anything. The news of Danny's death spread quickly, and seemingly within minutes, his family and friends were at the scene. Danny's close friend and fellow gaucho, Melvin Davis, recalled driving by the Louisiana on his way to dinner when he saw a bunch of ambulances outside the restaurant but didn't know what happened, so he continued on. A few minutes later, he received a phone call saying that Danny had been shot. Melvin raced to the scene, where he was met by Danny's family and friends and told that Danny passed away. Melvin and Danny had known each other since childhood. They had both grown up in Compton and were in the same Pop Warner football league on opposing teams. Danny's loved ones continued to flock to the scene, where they shed tears and embraced each other. A memorial was placed outside of the restaurant, and all throughout the night, people showed up with candles, flowers, balloons, and handwritten cards to place at the scene. The following day, Danny's family and friends held a Memorial Day candlelight vigil in his memory. Around 70 people stood outside of the restaurant as Danny's loved ones spoke. Danielle said that she loves and misses him, and she just wants justice for her son. She went on to say that Danny was a good son, good athlete, and a good kid. She recalled telling him to keep up the good work and that she was proud of him. By Tuesday morning, the news of Danny's death had made its way to Narbonne. The mood at the school was somber. All throughout the campus were talks of the shooting, what led up to it, and who could have been responsible. During lunch break, students held a ceremony for Danny. They prayed, played music, and shared memories. For the next few days, news crews flocked to the school and spoke with students and staff about the shooting.
Narbonne High School lost a good student and talented football player this week. Now county supervisors have put $10,000 out there to find his killer. Chris Blatchford talked with Dannie Farber's friends on campus this afternoon.
The end of the school day here at Narbonne High School didn't seem all that different to an outsider. But here in the inner campus, students earlier held a moment of silence. It was for 18-year-old Dannie Farber, an all-city football player who was shot and killed at this Compton restaurant. Destiny Waters says his murder woke up a lot of people at school.
Personally, me, it made me just, you're here today, gone tomorrow. We were just in the auditorium hugging, and now this is what we have.
She carried this tribute that spelled out good wishes from other students and featured a picture of Danny in the cap and gown he now won't get to wear at graduation. Class Vice President Maria Zamudio was his prom and homecoming date.
This hit us really hard. Like, one person affected a whole bunch of people, and it's like all the races came together in one.
She wanted to show us a memorial set up by students, but the principal wouldn't let our camera on campus. Assistant coach Robert Gill came out to talk.
He was a great kid, always wanted a hug.
The coach, who's known Danny since he was 7 playing Pop Warner football, says he was always a hard-working, good kid. The rear window of this teacher's van in the parking lot read, Danny, another angel. Now, the focus is on finding the devil who murdered him.
Everyone remembered Danny as being kind and respectful. They said he was excited about graduation and looking forward to attending college. The Gauchos had just attended a football banquet in early May where they were presented with their championship rings. Danny didn't even get to have his for a full month and was killed while wearing it. A $10,000 reward was offered for information leading to the killer's arrest. The tips began pouring in, but none of them panned out. Danny's funeral was held on Friday, June 5th, 2009, at the City of Refuge Church in Gardena. Hundreds of people showed up to pay their respects and share memories of Danny. One of his teachers, Anisha Rashid, said that he was the kind of student that all teachers hope to have. One of his friends, Kiara Jackson, said that he loved everything and he was always happy. Coach Douglas said that he hugged Danny every time he saw him. He went on to say that the last time they saw each other, Danny wanted a hug, but Coach Douglas was busy escorting a University of Michigan scout off the campus. He told Danny that he would be right back, but when he returned, Danny was gone. The Gauchos showed up to the service in their black jerseys. Danny's friend, Tremaine Brewer, had known Danny since they played Pop Warner football. He said he was just with Danny the Friday before his death. They were in front of the A building at Narbonne, talking, laughing, and playing around like always. Music legend Stevie Wonder showed up and sang the Lord's Prayer. He later spoke to the crowd and said, "I never had the pleasure of meeting Danny, yet I've heard stories about young men like Danny, young men who had the potential of being another Barack Obama." Family, friends, teachers, coaches, and community leaders took the stage and spoke about Danny and how much he meant to them. Meanwhile, detectives continued their investigation. The intersection of Rosecrans and Central is deep in Piru territory and it acts as a border between the Westside Pirus, the Campanella Park Pirus, and the neighborhood Pirus, also known as NHP. The Louisiana is located on the NHP side of the intersection. Although Danny wasn't a documented gang member, many of those that knew him said he was a member of NHP and went by the nickname D-Man. Also, numerous pictures of Dannie throwing up gang signs with known Pyru members began to surface. These facts changed some of the public's perception of the case, with some saying, although it's sad, death is just a part of gangbanging. Once these facts became widely known, many began making comparisons to Dannie and a young man named Jamel Shaw. On Sunday, March 2nd, 2008, at around 8:40 p.m., Jamel was walking down the street on his way home from a nearby shopping mall. Moments later, two Latino men exited a parked car and approached him. They asked Jamel where he was from, and before he could even answer, one of the men pulled a gun and opened fire. Jamel was hit in the stomach and fell to the ground. The man then walked over to him and opened fire again, this time hitting Jamel in the head. The man then ran back to the car and fled the scene. Jamel's father heard the gunshots and ran outside, where he saw Jamel lying on the ground just a few houses away. He ran over and stayed with his son until paramedics arrived and transported him to the hospital. At 9:55 p.m., Jamel Shaw was pronounced dead. He was 17 years old. Just like Dannie, Jamel had been playing multiple sports since childhood, but he loved football. He was a star player at Los Angeles High School and was being looked at by multiple colleges, including Stanford University and Rutgers University. Many believe that Jamel's murder was a case of mistaken identity, while others believe that he was just the latest casualty in the Black versus Latino war that plagued the city during the 1990s and 2000s. But after learning that Jamel was asked about his gang affiliation, investigators chose to focus on that angle. Detectives knew that Jamel lived in Blood territory, and the Bloods were at war with 18th Street. Also, on the night of the shooting, Jamel was wearing a red backpack, a red belt, and red shoes. He wasn't a documented gang member, so detectives figured it could have been a case of mistaken identity, but after speaking to those who knew Jamel, investigators learned that he was living a double life. Multiple people, including Jamel's girlfriend, told detectives that Jamel was a member of the Rolling 20s Bloods. On top of that, Jamel's MySpace page became public. His MySpace page was filled with gang references. He openly dissed rival gangs and posted pictures of himself and others throwing up Rolling 20s gang signs. An 18th Street member named Pedro Espinoza, also known as Darky, was ultimately convicted of Jamel's murder and sentenced to death. Narbonne's graduation was held on Thursday, June 18, 2009. Although everyone was excited, there was still a sadness in the air. Students and staff placed a wreath on one of the chairs in honor of Dannie. It read, "Dannie Farber, forever in our hearts." During the 2009 football season, the Gauchos retired Dannie's number 4 jersey, and Melvin dedicated the season to Dannie. He also carried the Narbonne flag during the season opener against Southeast High, and the entire team wore the number 4 on their helmets. The crowd was filled with Dannie's family and friends, with many wearing shirts with his picture on them. The team gathered at midfield to present a framed number 4 jersey to Dannie's parents. The Gauchos went on to dominate Southeast 46-6. Meanwhile, detectives continue working the case. In October of 2009, a man named Brandon Washington and a woman named Ashley Webb were arrested for a home invasion, but the district attorney rejected the case. On October 30 of 2009, a man named Arliss Watson was arrested. He told investigators that his brother Arlen killed Dannie and that Brandon and Ashley were witnesses. He said that Brandon was the driver and Ashley was a passenger in the car. Investigators learned that Arlen was a 21-year-old member of the Tragnew Park Compton Crips and went by the nickname AWAC. Once investigators learned the shooter's identity, the gang angle made a lot more sense. On November 25, 2009, investigators called Brandon in for questioning. A detective named Eddie Brown conducted the interview. Brandon said that on the night of the shooting, him, Arlen, and a group of others were hanging at Tragnew Park. Shortly after 9 p.m., Arlen and a woman asked Brandon for a ride home. As they drove past the Louisiana, Arlen told Brandon that he recognized someone sitting in the restaurant. Brandon said he didn't know if Arlen meant a friend or enemy, so he didn't pay it any mind. Arlen then told Brandon that he wanted to get some food, but he didn't know if he wanted to eat Subway or Louisiana. He then told Brandon to park in front of Subway. Brandon backed into the parking spot and watched Arlen exit the car and walk toward the Subway, but he continued walking past it until he was out of view. A few moments later, Arlen returned to the car, frantic with a gun in his hand, and said that he just shot somebody. Brandon denied knowing Arlen was armed and would shoot someone. In early January of 2010, Ashley spoke to Brown about the shooting. She said that a couple of weeks after the murder, she was at a party and Arlen was present. Ashley said Arlen told the group that he and Brandon were getting something to eat when he got into an exchange with Dannie. He referred to Dannie as a slob and admitted that he shot him. Ashley denied being in the car with Brandon and Arlen that night, and she only decided to speak with Brown after Brandon urged her to. On January 28, 2010, Detective Brown saw Arlen walking with a man named Damon Pearson. Brown identified himself and ordered both men to get on the ground. Damon obeyed, but Arlen said he didn't have a gun and took off running. After a brief chase, he was arrested on an unrelated charge and charged with Danny's murder while in custody. His bail was set at $2 million. Brown placed Arlen in a monitor cell with Brandon in hopes that Arlen would admit to the murder or at least incriminate himself, but Arlen stayed quiet and didn't admit to anything. Brown then took Arlen into the interview room and questioned him about the shooting. Arlen denied knowing anything about the shooting and denied being at the Louisiana that night. Meanwhile, officers executed a search warrant on Arlen's home. They recovered a pair of jeans that had the same design as the jeans the killer wore on the night of the shooting. Investigators began following up with witnesses but were having a hard time tracking down Randy Wells. Brown told Randy's mother that if he didn't call detectives, there would be a warrant put out for his arrest. In April of 2010, Randy contacted detectives. During the interview, Randy maintained that he didn't see anything while in the drive-thru, but as the interview went on, his story changed. Randy said that on the night of the shooting, he and Anika were in a Toyota Camry in the restaurant's drive-thru waiting for an order. Moments later, they saw Arlen walk in front of their car towards the restaurant. He was wearing a black baseball hat and a black hoodie. Randy and Arlen were good friends and neighbors. Randy knew that Arlen was a Compton Crip and the Louisiana was in the Piru area and was known to be frequented by Piru members, so he asked Arlen if he needed a ride. Arlen shook his head no and continued walking into the restaurant. Randy then noticed a gun on Arlen's waist. He watched Arlen walk over to Danny's table, and since the restaurant's door was open, he was able to hear their exchange. According to Randy, Arlen asked Danny where he was from, and Danny stood up, balled up his fist, and replied, "Neighborhood Piru." Moments later, Arlen opened fire and fled the restaurant. He then got into the passenger side of Brandon's car. When police arrived, Randy didn't want to get involved, so he told them that he didn't see anything. Randy stated that the day after the shooting, Arlen showed up to his house and asked if he was going to say anything about last night. Randy told him not to worry, he wouldn't say anything. While in jail, Arlen's telephone calls were recorded. In one conversation, he said that he could beat the fingerprints on the door and chair because he eats at Louisiana often. He went on to say that he was ready to do whatever to see daylight again. In another call, he said that the detectives were waiting him out and he knew that Randy told on him. Although Brown never mentioned Randy's name during their interrogation, he told Arlen that a man in the drive-thru saw him that night. The trial began in January of 2011. The prosecutor, Joe Porras, painted Arlen as a cold-blooded killer with little regard for human life. He stated that only a monster would walk into a crowded restaurant and kill a stranger just because he felt like it. Porras' case relied on witness statements, means, and motive. Brandon didn't testify during the trial, but Brown took the stand and read his statements to the court. Ashley took the stand and told the court about the statements she heard Arlen make at the party. Araceli took the stand and told the court about the shooting and the events leading up to it. Porras also called other witnesses that were present at the restaurant during the shooting to the stand. A man named Delmar was at the restaurant with his 13-year-old son. After ordering their food, Delmar told his son to wait for the food while he went to a nearby Food for Less grocery store. As Delmar left the restaurant, he saw a black man and woman sitting in a light-colored car in the drive-thru waiting for an order. Seconds later, a slender black man wearing a hoodie walked past them into the restaurant. Porras also used Arlen's recorded jailhouse calls during the trial. He pointed out how during a call, Arlen referenced Randy being a witness, but since Brown never named Randy as the witness, the only way Arlen could have known that is if he was at the Louisiana on the night of the shooting. The prosecution's gang expert during the trial was a detective named Eric Arias. Arias testified that he ran into Arlen on numerous occasions. He described a CPT tattoo behind his left ear and 2 teardrop tattoos under his right eye. He went on to say that from 2005 to the end of 2009, there were multiple field interview cards on Arlen where he admitted to being a Track New Park Crip. Arias stated that if a Crip ventured into Piru territory and killed a rival, it would elevate the gang's reputation within the gang world. Therefore, the shooting was committed in benefit of a street gang. The defense attorney in the case was a man named Tracy Grayson. Grayson told the court that Arlen was not the shooter. He pointed out how the only witnesses to place Arlen at the scene were unreliable or stood to gain favor by cooperating with the prosecution. Grayson told the court that Brandon and Ashley only cooperated after being charged in the home invasion, and after they agreed to testify, the home invasion charges were coincidentally dropped. Grayson also told the court that Randy was an unreliable witness because he initially told police that he didn't see anything, and he only placed Arlen at the scene after being pressured by investigators. He went on to say that Araceli and other witnesses told officers that the shooter was 5'8", but Arlen is 5'11". He also told the court about Delmar's statements. He stated that the shooter walked right past Delmar before entering the restaurant, and Delmar still couldn't identify him in photographic lineups or at trial. Porras told the court that the home invasion charges were dropped before Arlen was even named as a suspect. He went on to say that the shooter was wearing a hat and a hood, so it's possible that the witnesses were unable to get a real sense of his height. The defense's gang expert for the case was a man named Martin Flores. Flores told the court that there's no real evidence that Arlen is a Tragnew Park Crip. He went on to say that CPT stands for Compton, and Compton by itself does not signify gang affiliation. He went on to say that teardrop tattoos can mean many things, and there's no evidence that Arlen's teardrops refer to murder. Flores also stated that Arlen doesn't have any tattoos commonly associated with Tragnew Park, and there's no evidence that he goes by the nickname AWAC. When it came to the field interview cards, Flores stated that they are used to keep records on individuals and to document gang members and their activities, but they're also used as a scare tactic to get information out of people. He said 3 of Arlen's identification cards were created after Danny was killed, and it wouldn't have made sense for him to stay and answer police questions if he committed a murder. Flores said there are no pictures of Arlen with weapons, throwing up gang signs, or wearing gang clothing. He told the court that Arlen lived in a blood area, and if he was a Crip, they would have attacked him. Flores ended his testimony by saying that the ruthlessness of the shooting would be committed by someone heavily involved in the gang life with a history of violent crimes. The defense also called an eyewitness identification expert named Dr. Robert Schammer to the stand. Dr. Schammer stated that eyewitness identification is the least reliable means of identification. Under the best circumstances like good lighting, closeness, ample time, and lack of stress, eyewitness identification still has a low reliability rate of about 50%, and on top of that, a person's memory declines with time. He went on to say that Araceli was an unreliable witness because she wasn't able to positively ID Arlen when shown photographic lineups by police, but she went on to ID him as the shooter during the preliminary hearing and at trial. The defense also pointed to another eyewitness account to further prove how unreliable eyewitnesses are. On the night of the shooting, a woman named Deborah was in the Food for Less parking lot when she saw a black man wearing a dark hoodie running from the Louisiana restaurant. She told detectives that the man was between 5'6" and 5'8". On June 12, 2009, investigators showed Deborah a photographic lineup. She circled a man's picture and said that he was the man she saw running that night. She said she was 90% sure of her identification. On December 3, 2009, Deborah was shown a second photographic lineup containing a picture of Arlen, but she couldn't identify anyone in the lineup. Danny's alleged gang affiliation was also a topic during the trial. Grayson asked Araceli if Danny was a gang member and if she ever saw him or his friends wearing red or throwing up gang signs. Araceli said Danny wasn't a gang member and she never saw him or his friends participate in gang activity. Grayson then introduced the pictures of Danny wearing red and throwing up signs. Araceli reiterated that Danny wasn't a gang member and he wasn't throwing up Piru gang signs. Porras felt that Grayson was trying to diminish Danny's character, so he called Danny's school counselor to the stand to testify about how good of a person Danny was. The counselor told the court that Danny had good grades, played football, and had plans to attend college and become a firefighter. The counselor stated that they never saw Danny involved in any gang activity. Arlen didn't take the trial seriously, and all throughout the proceedings he could be heard laughing and having outbursts. Danny's family members took the stand and told the court how much he meant to them and how the shooting affected their family. Kenneth told the judge during the trial, Eleanor Hunter, that justice would be served if she gave Arlen whatever he's got coming to him. He went on to say that Danny was one hell of an athlete and told the court about the shock of going from planning a high school prom to suddenly planning a funeral. As Kenneth spoke, Danielle sat with their arms crossed and her head down. Danny's aunt, Rachel Malvo, struggled to speak. A clerk brought her a box of tissues and she told the court that parents are supposed to go before you, but these days it seemed like children are going before their parents. Arlen wasn't affected by the family's statements. He smiled as they spoke. Ultimately, Arlen was found guilty of murder for the death of Dannie Farber, as well as gun and gang enhancement charges. Before handing down the sentence, Judge Hunter spoke to Arlen directly. She stated, "You can smile and giggle all you want, but you're a murderer." She continued, "You can go back to your gang people and high-five them, but one day my words will come back to haunt you. It's not just that you took a life, it's the life you took. People can be a part of the problem or a part of the solution. Dannie Farber was part of the solution, and you are part of the problem." She concluded by saying, "We saw pure evil in this court, and it's you, Arlen Watson." On February 16, 2011, Arlen Watson was sentenced to 80 years to life in prison. Kenneth spoke to the press after the sentencing.
Today is a good day for us. This coward got exactly what he deserved. We wish he could have got more. Our emotions are all high. It's been a long 2 years, 2.5 years. And with this coward, I'm just happy that he's not able to do this to anybody else, to anybody else's family. We went through it, and I don't want to see nobody else go through it. So to me, justice and satisfaction, is well deserved. I'm just happy that, like I say, this guy is taken off the streets. It's ironic. I told him a time before when I did the news interview that he will see this face again, and we right back here and he saw me again. So he was smiling and laughing, but like I say, what makes you smile and laugh now make you cry later. So eventually he's gonna get what he deserved. Like I say, it's been a long, good 2 years, and to lose a son or lose a child is something that I don't wish on anybody. Parents and even grandparents shouldn't have to bury their kids. I hope that nobody else have to ever go through this.
Danielle also spoke to the press and reflected on the trial and sentencing. She stated, "I'm just glad it's over, just happy that justice was served." She continued, "It won't bring Danny back, but I'm glad Watson's off the street, somewhere where he won't be able to hurt another family like he hurt our family." Today, Danny's memory lives on through his family and friends. He's remembered as a good-hearted person with a bright future who was taken too soon. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, comment, and subscribe.